All right. So I'd like to give just a little intro about myself in terms of who I am, what I do here at Project Equity, and then I'll pass it to Donna to talk about herself, introduce, and take us from there. My name is Miyaka Cochran. I'm a Senior Business Engagement and Partnership Manager here at Project Equity, and I've been with the company just a little over 2 years, about 2.5 now. And I came from the world of tech in the Bay Area, where I like to say I was in the belly of the beast, and really developed a passion actually for small businesses and the needs of independent businesses, which are really the lifeblood of communities and that face a lot of struggles, particularly in areas like the Bay Area where the cost of living is so high, and there can be a big challenge to recruit and retain employees. And employee ownership is something that I've grown up around, with my uncle being a founding member of one of the first cooperatively owned grocery stores in California in the 70s, and my mother, who was very active in supporting and giving patronage to employee-owned businesses growing up. So it was always something that I felt very strongly that this is something that's great for the community and for employees, and I just feel so privileged to be able to do this work with Project Equity to help get the word out about these business models and help businesses explore it. So with that, I will pass it off to Donna.
Hi, everybody. I'm Donna Sky, and I'm also a business engagement and partnership manager here at Project Equity. I've been with the company for a few years now, and I just feel really passionate about the work that we do. I myself come from a business owning background. I've owned a food manufacturing company for about 10 years in San Francisco. So, working with, supporting, the dynamic business ownership uh, culture in the Bay Area is something that's genuinely near and dear to my heart. So, something else is that I did not really know a lot about employee ownership prior to working with this organization. So it's, sort of the information that we're sharing today kind of comes from that. Like, what do I wish I had known about basically the power of employee ownership? So next slide here. So I mentioned we work with an organization called Project Equity. So who is Project Equity? We are a local nonprofit. We're based in Oakland. Our headquarters is in Oakland, but we have a national presence. So we work directly with cities and states all over the countries, and business service providers and with organizations like the SBDC, and most importantly, directly with business owners like you, to help you secure your legacy and to transition to employee ownership if it's the right fit. So, starting from exploring if employee ownership is the right fit to actually all the way through to the transition. And we really believe in the power of this that we'll get into today. But to really help secure your legacy, provide a path to exit if that's something you're interested in, or to strengthen your business today. Also, to keep these businesses rooted locally and to retain jobs. Um, so our agenda is pretty robust. But we will make sure to reserve lots of time for Q&A. If you do have questions throughout, please feel free to answer them in the chat. If we don't answer them in real time, we will make sure to either get to them at the end or to follow up with you. But we'll go over a little bit about why employee ownership is relevant and important right now. We'll talk about some of the benefits and how they work. We'll dig in there and how we can help you as a thought partner to explore if employee ownership is the right fit for you. So, what is employee ownership anyway? You may hear the term kind of interchangeably: employee ownership, worker owns, co-op, ESOP, EOT, but in general, broad employee ownership is sort of a broad term to really define and to say that a company is owned by a broad base of employees who work in the company and own it. So they own the company that they work in, and they get to benefit from the financial performance of the company and also have a voice in the governance of the business. And why is employee ownership relevant right now? So this is an important one. So, studies, articles, and more importantly, all of you probably have experienced some of the challenges. I guess that's a light way to say the challenges of having a small business in general, and then specifically over the last few years. Unique challenges have come up, and something that often comes up is that recruiting and retaining workers. So being employee owned, one of the big benefits of that is that there's a much higher retention of workers. In fact, there's about 67% of owners reported trying to hire folks during the pandemic, that this has come up. So, understanding that employee ownership can really provide sort of a solution to help that is important. Also, 92% of owners have reported not only having a challenge finding workers in general, but finding workers that are qualified for the positions that are open. So some real challenges that happen in general in the Bay Area or in Northern California, but even more so, this has been exacerbated during the pandemic. And many, again, in line with the Great Recession, Great Resignation, not Great Recession, Great Resignation is that, there have been nationally over 50 million workers have quit their jobs since May 2021 alone. So, the pandemic started in 2020, but just in the last year, this has been the highest rate on record for folks leaving their jobs. So, the cost to replace workers, as I'm sure all of you know, and I know I knew firsthand in having a manufacturing company, to find and then train and replace workers is really big pain point for a lot of businesses right now. So, that's also coupled with the fact that there's almost, over 11 million job openings right now that need to be filled. So next. So surprise, surprise, over half of the CFOs say that employee turnover has definitely increased in the last 3 years. And, replacing those workers really cost a significant amount. And, as we're sort of going through this, if any of you, have any kind of statements about your experience with this, I'd just like to say, feel free to add that in the group chat, but you can also DM us directly if you want to on the chat. But another key fact is that, 94% of employees would stay at their work if employers were invested in their long-term learning. And we'll dig into a little bit about how there's a path to make that possible. So people, perks, and pay are not enough. What we're hearing is, increasing wages alone, particularly in the Bay Area. Again, we have some of the highest wages in the country. But, owners have reported often that even having that pay or having a great manager has not really been able to solve this problem of attracting, retaining, and recruiting workers. So with that, I will talk a little bit directly about the employee ownership benefits. So what we found is that employee-owned companies, these benefits can be really far-reaching. So starting with the ability to be able to strengthen the company itself. And these benefits are not just one time, they're year over year and far-reaching. So employee-owned companies have reported having 8.5% higher profit margins year over year than their peers in the same industry. And they also grow at a much higher rate. And one example of this is a company that we worked with um, for a few years to help them with their transition. It's a great company called A Slice of New York. They're located in Silicon Valley area. They have multiple pizza slice locations, and they have had tremendous benefits from becoming employee owned that have had great impact on their workers. So in the years since they have become employee owned, the 35 workers at A Slice of New York have grown and generated enough profit to distribute and share in over $500,000 in patronage. So this is huge to food service workers, particularly, in this much needed economic insecure time, having these extra funds for the workers and their commitment to growing the company has really had a big impact on the company and its ability to generate those additional profits. As well, employee-owned firms were 4 times more likely to retain employees during the pandemic. So 4 times, we just sort of went over some of those kind of dismal statistics, but 4 times more likely to retain their employees during the pandemic. So, really important tool for businesses and for the people who work there. Employee-owned companies also have significantly less layoffs year over year, as you can see. This was even before the pandemic. The number of layoffs in employee-owned companies was much lower, and that has continued into the present. So, sometimes 2 and 3 times less layoffs than their peers. So I'd like to just talk a little bit about some specific additional case examples of businesses that we've worked directly with. National data is great, but what are those real life stories or those real life examples around impact of being employee owned? One, particularly during the pandemic, was California Solar. So, employee ownership is a powerful tool during normal business times, but has really shined as a powerful business structure during the pandemic. So, for example, California Solar, like so many businesses, they did have to pause their business during the pandemic, but as owners, they all sort of came together to innovate while being furloughed because they were owners. So instead of having one owner sort of, at home during the pandemic, sort of scratching their head, what am I going to do? How can I pivot? All the employees who were worker owners came together and collectively came up with a strategy to pivot and shifting their traditional work in solar to also offering generators during the pandemic. And they really have attributed this sort of resilience to being employee owned. And then another company that we've worked with and has recently transitioned to employee owned is the local butcher shop. I don't know if any of you have heard of them. If you have, feel free. Great company based in Berkeley. And they were able to actually transition to employee owned, to a worker owned cooperative during the pandemic. So the local butcher shop was founded by a husband and wife team. And they were really committed to staying rooted locally. And, you know, it was important for them to sort of in their to preserve the legacy of their company and to also find a path to exit. So transitioning to employee owned gave them that path. And it helped them to, have the full weight of ownership off of their shoulders, but to share it collectively with the folks who work in the business. And also keep their business growing. And since the transition and throughout the pandemic, their company has grown and has been strengthened during some of the most challenging times that many businesses have faced. And then another key thing that employee ownership can be really a powerful tool with is around selling a business or providing a path to an exit in succession planning. We live in the Bay Area and we often hear about these unicorns that sell for millions and even billions with a B of dollars. But those, we often don't hear about those businesses that don't sell. And that's partly because selling a business isn't easy. Over half of business owners in the US are 55 years or older. So they're going to be looking for sort of a path to exit. And if when there's a lot of businesses for sale, that could, impact, there might be more businesses for sale than there are buyers. So, keeping in mind that having a path or a strategy where you can sell your company to the people who actually work in it can be a really powerful path to exit. Also, less than 30% of businesses now transition to families. So in the past, that was sort of a common way for current owners to exit. They would, transition or have what we call family transition, where maybe a child or someone else in their family would take over that business, but that's happening less and less now. And only about 20% of businesses sell. So, a statistic that a lot of folks, myself included, and many of my peers in the industry did not know, that only about 20% of businesses sell. So to dig in a little deeper about how this works, I'm going to pass it back to Miyaka and he can tell you more.
All right, thank you so much, Donna, and thank you all again for I see some great questions coming in through chat and Q&A, and just a reminder, we will do some live Q&A at the end, so I'm going to address one of the questions that came through the Q&A function, and also if there's anything in the chat that makes sense, we'll bring that up too. So let's jump into how it actually works. We've talked a lot about why employee ownership is important now, what the advantage it can have and how it can be a way to um, solve for challenges that businesses are having. So let's talk about how it actually works. First of all, similarly to a buyout of other sorts, if you're going through a business broker or other sort of private sale, sale price is and deal terms are finalized. This is an acquisition. You as the owner can still stay on in the business and become an employee owner, but the business itself is being sold to the employees. Once the transitioned employee-owned company is created, so let's say you're creating a co-op, that new entity actually takes out a loan to buy out the old entity. So it's called a leveraged buyout if you're not familiar with that term, meaning that the business itself is taking on the loan, which it's paying off out of future revenue. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but it creates a very safe way for the business to continue on in the future and allows for the owner to also be able to get paid for their work in the business. And how the deal is structured, if we want to kind of open the hood on that, generally a portion of the sale is owner financed, and that is in the form of a seller's note. And what that means is that you are taking a percentage of business and saying, okay, for this percentage of the total amount, I am willing to not get paid up front for that piece, but I will get paid over time, generally on a 5 to 7 year timeline, plus interest. And so it's a way both to ensure that on for the financing side that they have some level of protection there, but also allows the owner to be able to play a portion of over get a portion over time plus interest. And so some owners are actually choosing to get creative and take a larger amount that they're seller financing to maximize some of their financial options, including an earnout option where they could, accept a lower today value, but get a piece of additive revenue over time as well. The remaining 50 to 77% on average is bank or lender financed. And so this comes from what's called often a CDFI, or it's a community development fund, or other mission aligned funds. We actually have a couple ourselves that we've developed that we can tap into to actually finance the transaction. And then generally, depending on the model, if it's a cooperative, for example, the employees will have a buy-in amount, but it's fairly nominal. It can be a couple $100s, a few $100s, $1,000. Often it represents roughly 5% of the total sales price, but that's just kind of a best practice. It doesn't have to. Something to allow them to have a skin in the game, but something that's still accessible. Now, going from here, broad-based employee ownership models. So when we talk about employee ownership, of course, we're talking about broad-based employee ownership because stock options are a form of employee ownership. A management buyout is a form of employee ownership as well, but those are not the models that we work with. We work with models that allow all employees to have a path to ownership. And the three primary models that we work with in this space are the ESOPs, or employee stock ownership plan, which are structured as retirement plans, very similarly to 401ks, and they're even governed by the same body, ERISA, on a federal level. And so the profits of the business go to benefit that retirement plan that employees have stock in, and that's how the ownership takes place. Now, a worker cooperative is as an entity that is wholly owned by the employee owners who share in profits, and they elect a board of directors, which is the governing body in a cooperative. And then that governing body, board of directors, oversees management. So one in cooperatives, the board oversees management, the management oversees operations and the employees then elect the board. And employees can also serve on the board as well, become elected. Uh, and then finally, last but not least, is Employee Ownership Trust, or EOT. This is a very new model in the United States. There's actually less than 30 nationally. Um, but that number is rapidly rising because this is a model that was an adaptation of what's called a perpetual purpose trust, utilized in the UK as now a form of employee ownership. So it's highly customizable, that you can incorporate different elements, whereas a worker-owned cooperative and an ESOP have things baked in that you can't change. An EOT does have some customization. And so really here, the idea is to figure out what your goals are for yourself and for the future of your business and employees and work backwards from there. So instead of kind of going through these options and be like, which is the best for me, think about the future of your business and what you want, and we can help you narrow down the options to figure out which model is going to best support the needs for you as the owner and the business. Now, let's see if you were paying attention. We're going to have a little bit of an employee ownership quiz. So I invite you all to populate your answers in the chat and follow along to see how much you've picked up or already know about employee ownership. So, question one, true or false? Selling to employees requires accepting a lower selling price. Is that true or is that false? Any thoughts? Any ideas? The answer is false. Yes, you are correct, Dana. That's false. Excellent. Oh, Tom and Jessica, all correct. A fair sales price is established by debt capacity, just like in a bank finance sale to an individual. So it's going to be, comparable to what a fair sales price could be on the open market. Generally, that roughly, falls within a certain range. What it won't be is a strategic buyout. similar to what Donna says. If somebody's out there to buy you up, to close you down, to get you off the market because you're a competitor, they're probably going to offer more than what the value of the business is, right? But that's not aligned with sort of the mission and goals of what we're trying to do here. So is it comparable to what you'd get from a private buyer? In many cases, if not most cases, yes, but it's not comparable to a strategic buyout. Now, the next question is true or false. Employees will have to pay out of pocket to buy the business. The employees are going to have to take out loans or other financial, uh, other financial means to be able to pay for the business. And if you were paying attention, that's correct, Jessica. Again, that's a no. Employees are not obligated to finance the transaction. Usually it is completed through a leveraged buyout. So again, the business itself is actually taking out a loan to pay out for future revenue. And often the employees will have a small contribution if it's a cooperative, but it's not required for them. So this is a way that provides, a path to make this happen without having a large group of employees having to kind of pull together and figure out how to actually come up with the funds to make it happen. There are funds available to make it happen, and we can tap into them for you. Now, true or false, selling owners can remain strategically involved after the transition. Once the owner is selling the business to the employees, can they remain involved? True or false? That is very true. Excellent, everyone. I see everyone's getting this one right. Yeah, selling owners have many options to stay involved in the business, including in their original role if they are a GM or president or CEO, or maybe shifting a role and focusing on, something and sharing the load of management a little bit, taking the opportunity, as well as, last but not least, an opportunity to potentially serve on the board. So really kind of going into retirement operationally, but maintaining a board position for a few years to continue to provide guidance for that business and for that new management and leadership team. Now, the last question I have for you is true or false? All employees will be managing the business equally. So you're transitioning to a cooperative where everyone is an owner. The question is, will all employees be managing the business equally? True or false? Ah, very good question. I see false question mark. That is absolutely correct. This is one of the key things that happens when people think about cooperatives is they think, okay, everyone is an owner, they're going to have a vote, so we're going to have to vote on everything. Anytime we need to buy a new stapler, everyone's going to have to vote on it. No, that's not the case. A strong management layer is important to any business, and there are ways to include open book management, participatory management practices, other things that you can customize and add in into employee-owned model. But operationally, largely, your business should not change. You do have a governance layer, which will, in most cases be elected by the employee owners, and that's the filter point. That's the way to ensure that their voice is collectively represented in the business, but you still need strong management to be able to execute and be nimble enough to not have everyone vote on whether they want, like blue or purple coffee cups in the break room. Now, let's get into a little bit about how we can actually make this happen. So we've covered the benefits, we've covered a little bit of how the deals work, and you guys did great on the quiz, so thank you all for your participation there. Now let's jump into actually how can we help you make this happen. What I want to do is give you a picture and overview of the transition process. So we work in a few different phases. And so how we start is step one, and that's exploration. And so you're right on the cusp of that right now. You're coming to a webinar, learning about it. And how we do that further is actually do free consultation with you. We are thankfully a nonprofit working on a national level, and we have amazing funding partners to allow us to do this work with you to actually explore the fit of employee ownership and how it can be beneficial to you and give you an idea and give you feedback of whether we estimate that it's viable. Once we get to that point where we can estimate, yes, this is viable, it's highly likely to meet your needs and also the needs of your business. So to be able to ensure that you have a way to um, the business itself is going to have what it needs to make it happen, as well as is it going to meet your needs for the owner? And we do this then in a feasibility process where we do three work streams. We go through the financial feasibility. So we're actually doing debt capacity analysis, financial projections, to come up with what would be a range of recommended sales prices for you and the employees to see based on different financing scenarios. So you as the owner have your sort of menu of options for what you can choose for different participation in seller financing, various pieces. If you want to maybe do a partial transition and only sell part of your business, a portion, a percentage of your business now and sell the rest later, all those different things that you might want. And then we do management transition needs. So we outline the needs for you as the owner. If you're leaving, or wanting to adjust your role, can that be replaced internally? Does it need external replacement or a hybrid? So maybe the role is split up, some of it is replaced internally, and then maybe a sort of downsized role is outsourced externally to replace to make sure your full skill set is replaced. And then last and most important too is employee engagement. So we're actually going to also give education to your employees about what this means, gauge interest, surface any questions and concerns, address those, so that at the end you all have a straw model of the business's employee and entity, what it will mean for you, the business and employees for the future, and what a potential sales price could be to get you to a decision point. So this is really the bulk of the learning process. So we're going to really get you to the point where you understand the model, which model is going to fit, how that works, and what the future will look like for all involved. After that point, if you and the employees decide that this is something that you want to do, we can offer you a transition plan. So this is actually the design and implementation of the model. And we continue on those three work streams. So we work through the financial point, developing the financing in collaboration with you. How is the deal going to be structured, and the employee and business function, all those points, management transition needs, and then deeper employee engagement and training to prep and become employee owners. At the end of that process, we bring in the lawyer and the CPA to ensure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, and we finalize the deal. And the owner gets paid for the portion that's financed by the financial institution, and and a new employee-owned entity is born. And we as a nonprofit have a lot of great collaborators in the space, and so we work with other organizations that do the similar kind of work. But I will highlight one of the things that's very unique about our work is our Thrive program. So post-transition, we'll actually stick with the company for up to 2 years for additional consulting, advisory, and guidance. This can take the form often of sitting in board meetings. If a board of directors is new and the company hasn't had that before, we want to be there to help ensure that that's kicking off well, that the board and management has a healthy working relationship, and that's all going smoothly, as well being involved with new employee owner onboarding, maybe the first time you're doing the sort of patronage or profit sharing to the end of the year. We can be available to be involved as the new entity is really going through this stuff in practice, not just in learning. And that's how we work. And I did see somebody pop in a question I want to address, that somebody said they had an issue setting up a free consultation. Yes, it's possible to email us, and we will share our emails at the end to ensure that you have that as well. And maybe Donna, if you want to share your email address in the chat, just so people have that. Um, so, in terms of the feasibility, kind of to double click on that, this is really the sort of bread and butter of what you need to get to the point of a decision for the future of your business. And you're going to learn what it's going to be employee-owned business, what it's going to mean for you financially, and really how it is all going to work. And so, as I said before, we're going to conduct a debt capacity analysis to establish sale viability and a price ceiling, sort of what's the maximum debt that this business can bear to pay off over time, support initial employee engagement. Often this will be definitely in a survey, an employee survey, but depending on the size and needs of the company, maybe it's going to be a process of doing a little open meeting altogether, an open Q&A, or maybe we do a separate meeting just with key sort of management people, whatever's kind of needed and best for your business. Um, and then we want to understand any possible future management scenarios. What are you wanting to do as the owner? I worked with an owner who, in talking to me, she said, I really do everything. I have to have all these different hats, but my bread and butter is I love sales and account management. Like that's what I did before I was a business owner, and that gives me the most joy at work. If I could just do sales and account management for the last 5 to 10 years of my working life, that would feel like semi-retirement to me, even if it's full time, because at least I'm only putting 40 hours a week and not my usual 60 or 70. And so for her, this was an opportunity to, end her career strong, doing the core and the thing that she loves the most, while still remaining connected to the business and benefiting as an employee owner through profit sharing and other things. So that's a possibility, but that meant that her other roles and functions she needed to do, she needed to offset and get replaced elsewhere. And so we worked with her to outline those. And then as you get into design and implementation, you have a blueprint for what you need there. And then last is sort of just an encompassing of all this packaging this all up into a straw model of employee ownership. So you know exactly what it will look like as an employee-owned entity in terms of readiness factors. So the reality is that, we have a colleague who would say if you see one business, you've seen one business, right? Like, yes, that there are things that have commonalities across industries, business size, location, but ultimately it's never going to be the same exercise. We have to look at each business uniquely. That being said, here are some general broad readiness factors to consider for your business. First of all, is it a profitable company? There needs to be some level of profitability in this company for this really to be effective in recruiting, retaining, and rewarding employees to ensure the future of your business is strong and use that as a strategy. So there has to be some level of profitability. It doesn't need to be life-changing at the beginning, but it needs to be something. Um, is there a stable size and strong team? So generally we recommend, often about 10 plus employees as a starting point. We've worked on smaller, um, we've seen smaller that can definitely work, but having about 10 and ultimately 15 or 20 employees, it starts to become more viable the larger you get, because if people leave and other people come in, there's still a core amount of people that really keep the business going. And also in terms of strength of team, how many team members, how many employees have been there, medium to long term, more than 1 or 2 years, maybe, 5 years, 10 years, or longer. That really helps the viability of this as well. And then you have the proven track record, which is just a business that's been around, a long time. The longer the business is around, the more financial history there is, the easier it is to be able to secure financing to make these deals work, for example. And to that extent, for financing, there is flexible capital for businesses transitioning to employee ownership. This is a shout out specifically for one, which is our Employee Ownership Catalyst Fund. So in addition to our funds just to transition businesses, we also have creative financing options. So this is a way for businesses who maybe need more of a capital injection now, and they are very interested in planning on transitioning to employee ownership, but they're still stabilizing, amidst or post-pandemic, and they need money to stabilize or to grow or bounce back. This can be a way to basically get a favorable loan now to then be able to actually transition in a couple years, or at least a partial transition a couple years, with some of the funds being potentially even forgivable. So really great example of just some of the money out there that's that is available to help support businesses, pre and post transition and during the transition as well. So now we've finished our presentation. Thank you all for your engagement, for your patience, and for your great questions that you've provided. We're going to get to the Q&A in just a minute, but I want to make sure that you all see the link to join up. So this is our general link. We will share this for everyone, but Donna actually has offered to be able to connect directly with you all specifically who have attended this webinar. And so regardless if you have just curiosity and you want to learn more, If you are very serious about this and are wanting to get, deep feedback on how to measure viability, how to make sure you know that this is a good option, wherever you are in the spectrum, we'd love to talk with you because we're here to be your employee ownership navigator and get you to know, what you need to know to understand the models, understand the strategies, and estimate viability for how likely this is going to be able to meet up with your goals and be a strong option for the future of the business and employees, of course. Um, so, we have one question in the chat we'll get to, but we also will invite people to, raise your hand if you want to get unmuted and ask your question live. We'd be happy to do that. But just make sure you capture this contact information right here. It's Donna at project. Whoops, let me go back. Donna at project-equity.org. And then Donna has also provided her direct booking link, so you can book a consultation directly with her through that link. But if that doesn't work, feel free to email her, and we'll get started. So I just want to say thank you again to NorCal SBDC Network for partnering with us and allowing us to be able to host this wonderful presentation. And without further ado, let's get into some Q&A. So if you have burning questions, go ahead and ask them in the Q&A function, ideally, or chat, or raise your hand if you want to ask it live. So we'll start with a couple questions that we have, and then as new questions come up, we'll kind of just take them popcorn style for the last bit of our time here today. So um, I think this is a really good question that oh, there's a great one in the chat right now. I'll get to in a second. But the first one is from Dana. Is looking interested for taking a class or course about how to set up a co-op business. Do we have any recommendations? So that's a very good question. There are tons of resources. We actually do have some partners that we can get you connected to if you're looking to get a class, especially if you don't have a business already. If you're looking to establish a new cooperative, that's not what we do, but we can get you connected. So definitely email us, and we want to learn more about what your needs are before we can, refer you out. But the other thing I will say is that our feasibility study is also designed to educate. We are educators, and so we don't take the form of classes, but through our exploration process and free consultation, we want to help you learn about this. So please, we'd love to speak with you and help you learn about cooperative business, how to set it up, um, what you should consider before you do so, and really get you to understand the model so that you can make a good decision in terms of moving forward with a co-op or maybe a different model. We often have people come to us with a certain model in mind, and through discussions and sort of understanding strategy and goals, they actually shift and then decide to go with a different model. So we've had people come to us saying, I want an ESOP. And then through discussion and work, they're like, actually, a co-op is going to be better for us. And likewise, people come and they're like, oh, I want a co-op. Oh, actually, an EOT may be better. So um, great. So going on from there, we have another question that came up too was case studies on management management models and how they compare. Donna, do you have thoughts you want to share on that one? And you're on mute.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's different types of levels of engagement from the workers when companies become employee owned. Some companies, I know Miyaka said we wouldn't want you to, change your business model where now there's a lot of time being spent on whether you have pink or purple cups in
Right.
in the lunchroom. So that's not what we're talking about. That's would just not be wise business practice. But there, some companies choose when they're designing their new entity to have a higher level of engagement from more of the employee owners than others. So, we don't want to break what isn't broken, right?
Mhm.
So if your management style has worked really well for the company, great. But if you'd like to sort of shift to having higher engagement in the decision making process, that could be designed into um, the operating agreement or bylaws of the new organization. There are, there's one example in particular, Namaste Solar. That's a company that is a very, very successful solar company, and they're a little bit on the higher engagement side for their workforce in making sort of larger decisions than some. And then there are organizations that have really kind of kept more of a sort of a more typical of what you would think of in terms of managing day-to-day decisions. So we do have those examples, and I know I shared the link for the case studies
Mhm.
uh, in the chat. I can do it again. That has some examples of these different businesses.
Yeah, great answer there, Donna. And just also kind of goes to the fact that we're happy to share materials. There's a lot out there. So if we understand more specifically what you're wanting to understand or sort of, get to the point of conclusion on, we can help direct you there. So drop us an email, and Donna or I can certainly help get directed you there. And it's true, we don't want to change what's not broken, right? But there's lots of fun ways you can do employee advisory boards, other ways, open book management, participatory management, a lot of tools there. And some businesses kind of will choose to do stuff like that as more of a phase two. So they say, let's set up employee ownership as a cooperative. Let's go ahead and set up this function and profit sharing and governance layer, and then we'll kind of set a goal of maybe in 1 to 2 years after that, we'll try out some new, management styles or sort of, way deeper ways of engagement. So I know that a slice of New York pizza set up, kind of small micro teams, which were people who were, focused on different elements. So they had a team that was like, okay, what we're going to do is just dive into cleaning and maintenance and like how do we clean and maintain our equipment and restaurant here and our ways that we can improve that. And so they were a cross-departmental team that really kind of came together to problem solve on that, or kind of like a tiger team, as I think that was started with NASA with the Apollo 11 situation back in the day. So um, next question is why is Winco so great, or how is Winco so great? So for those of you who don't know, Winco is one of the largest ESOPs in the country, if I am correct, and they are a bit of like similar to a bit of a Costco. They're kind of a bulk, almost wholesale type of business, but they don't require membership to be a part of it, and they're employee owned in the form of an ESOP, and they really are amazing. I know when I went to college, Winco was everything for me. They're a really fantastic store, and it's an example I think of a really successful ESOP because I know that when I go into a Winco, all the employees just have this sort of brightness and engagement about them that you don't always get, right? People seem to take pride in their work and have a level of sort of engagement and helpfulness, people asking me how I'm doing, employees just in passing and things like that. And it just kind of has a different vibe, and I find that common in my experiences as a customer there. Um, so the next question is, in regards to the feasibility, can you give us a little bit more information about what it looks like to evaluate the employee engagement portion? Yes. So this portion specifically really is bespoke to your individual company and the employee base and your culture. So we need to work with you to understand what's best. So some businesses like to bring in, and it makes sense to bring in the employees into the conversation early because the owner is very open and transparent about this type of stuff. Others, they're like, no, I as the owner want to wait till we see a sales price and management transition kind of pieces before we even talk to the employees because I don't want to get their hopes up if this isn't going to sort of meet my needs, that's fine too. And what we almost always do is a survey as a part of it. So it's a questionnaire to get questions, concerns, etc. But in addition to that, there's also there's also ways that we can engage them in terms of education, right? So we'll give materials for them to understand if we're looking at a cooperative or an EOT or an ESOP to make sure that they understand. And it's, it's common for employees to come up with concerns initially, and it's often because they don't necessarily have all the information that they need. So for example, you have an employee who says, "Oh, I don't want to be an employee owner. Like I see all the stress and all this extra work the owner has to do. I don't want to deal with that. I just want to like show up and do my work and work well." But then once they realize that their role isn't going to change at the company necessarily, um, but they're going to be able to have a little bit more of a voice in the business and they're going to get profit sharing. It's a lot of benefit and a lot of value for not a lot of lift and also not a lot of risk too, in terms of their own personal investment in the business. And so once they kind of understand those pieces, often there's a lot of support for employee ownership. And you don't need full participation. You don't need 100% of people to join in. You just need a healthy percentage of the business of the workforce to be able to participate. So again, in regards to your question, it's bespoke, it's going to be unique to your business, and it's something that we need to kind of work out with you in terms of what engagement is going to work best in the feasibility. So another question here is, uh, do you all ever need grant support? Um, yeah, great information. We're always looking for new collaborators and connections, and so if that's something that you have a connection for, definitely, email us if you have connections to other people that our work would be interesting to. Always love introductions, so happy to do that. Well, go
And
ahead,
then
Donna.
we have one more, Miyaka,
Okay.
from Shannon with regards to feasibility. Can you give a little more information about what it looks like to evaluate the employee engagement portion? Did you answer
Y-
that one?
Yes, yeah. I think you were answering another question, but I
Okay,
just answered that one.
okay, okay, great.
Um, Yeah, but again, if you guys have follow-ups, if you have any additional questions, we have a couple more minutes. But happy to also, we'd love to speak with you. So regardless of where you are in your journey, whether you're just curious and interested, or you're very serious and wanting to get connected to resources and information to learn and kind of get you to that decision point where you say yes or no, this is going to be the direction for me and my company, we'd love to hear from you. So I want to give a huge thank you to the NorCal SBDC. It's been a great partner with us and supporting our work in California. And for those of you not in California, we work nationally. So don't worry. Please sign up for a consultation, a conversation, a chat, and we'd love to connect with you. And also, thank you so much, Donna, a wonderful co-presenter and amazing colleague. And I really do hope you all take advantage of Donna's offer to be able to connect directly. She has a wealth of experience and is just really fantastic. So I think you'll really have a great opportunity to be able to connect with her, and I really hope you do. All right. And with that, I think we will, I'm going to stop sharing to say a final goodbye. So thank you all. Any final thoughts, Donna, that you'd like to share?
No, just I'm excited to speak with you all and learn more about your business and interest in employee ownership.